Welcome to my channel. If you've enjoyed watching one or two of our videos and haven't subscribed yet, click that subscribe button now for more captivating stories like this. Don't miss a single story. The narrative begins as the deserted street is illuminated by moonlight, seeping through thick clouds, while the warm wind rustles the trees surrounding the building. From within the building, one can observe young men sitting at their desks through the window. Among them is Chen Gil, who is engrossed in sketching something in his notebook, skillfully twirling a pen in his hand. Gil takes pleasure in being perceived as a diligent middle school student, confident in his ability to overcome any challenges that come his way. However, a glimpse in Gil's eyes reveals that he is grappling with a particular task. This challenge takes the form of a beautiful yet troublesome girl, whom Gil has fallen in love with. Disregarding the teacher's instructions, the girl turns to Gil and asks him to do her homework, as she has plans in the evening. Gil is delighted to be the one she seeks assistance from and, blushing slightly, agrees to help. This enchanting classmate, known as Xiaomei, catches Gil's attention, but before he can engage in further conversation, the teacher intervenes and dismisses the girl from the classroom. As Xiaomei leaves, Gil musters the courage to ask her if they can play a game together. With the teacher's disapproving gaze upon her, Xiaomei hesitates, but then unexpectedly turns around and accepts Gil's proposal, indicating the time and place for their rendezvous after class. As rain begins to pour, Gil hopes to make it home before the game commences. On his way home, he contemplates his beloved and the efforts people make to conserve electricity, ensuring a smooth gaming experience. Upon arriving at his drenched house, Gil informs his mother that he has returned home and that classes are over. His mother expressed surprise when she saw her son return home earlier than usual. However, Gil quickly informed his mom that they were let out early due to the inclement weather. The rain was pouring heavily outside. In response, his mother suggested that Gil change his clothes and take some rest while she finished cooking dinner. Feeling hungry and unwilling to wait, Gil proposed that they order food for delivery. His mother agreed and mentioned that she would leave the food outside his room. As Gil entered his room, he noticed a box labeled Cosmos lying on the hallway floor. This intrigued his mother, who was surprised to learn that Gil was into gaming. While she didn't mind him playing games, she was concerned that he might forget to eat while engrossed in gaming. Observing his haste, she assumed he had made arrangements to play with someone, possibly because of a girl. Gil was aware that Cosmos was the most popular virtual reality (VR) game among today's youth worldwide. The game only required a helmet for full immersion into the virtual world. Gil worried because he lacked gaming experience, and this would be his first game. He believed Xiaomei to be an expert in the game already. He lay down on his bed and examined the helmet once more, regaining his confidence. While he inspected the helmet, he received a message on his phone from a girl inviting him to play the game. Gil then placed the helmet on the charger to ensure it wouldn't run out of power during the game, put it on his head, and prepared himself to dive into the virtual world. Gil eagerly anticipated meeting the girl he was deeply infatuated with, considering it to be their first date. To his surprise, as Gil prepared for the virtual experience with the Cosmos helmet, the immersion process began. The loading sequence initiated, and the first sensation Gil felt was a touch on his foot, accompanied by a moist sensation, heightening his anticipation for what awaited him. Holding his breath, Gil found himself in a room adorned with square-patterned flooring. Proceeding cautiously, he took his initial steps. In the distance, a triangle bearing the game's title came into view, accompanied by pleasant music and the sound of falling water droplets. Suddenly, a sharp beam of light dazzled Gil, prompting him to shield his face with his hands. He strained to discern the source of the illumination, and before him materialized a game window, expressing gratitude for his purchase, along with a welcoming voice guiding Gil into the game. The graphics and the game's design left a profound impression on Gil, igniting his curiosity about what lay ahead. Unexpectedly, the welcoming screen transitioned into a blank white canvas, leaving Gil with numerous questions. A warning message appeared, indicating that the game was a test of survival. Gil realized that he was about to embark on an extraordinary adventure. The game presented him with the opportunity to select a class and immerse himself fully in the virtual world. Faced with the decision, Gil pondered for a while, recalling the girl's mention of supporta among the available options. However, since there was no explicit reference to supporta, Gil decided to choose based on his personal preference and ultimately selected Hill as his class. Following the class selection, Gil proceeded to customize his character's attire, aiming for a formal outfit that would appeal to Xiaomei's tastes. With each customization completed, the game transformed Gil's virtual avatar into an exquisite suit that fitted him impeccably. The clothes on Gil underwent a rapid transformation, leaving him astounded by the costume he now wore. The game presented him with his new image, an elegantly chosen, strict black suit that was perfectly suited for his date with the girl. As the game loading process commenced, Gil eagerly awaited the beginning. However, an unexpected turn of events occurred when he heard an announcement about worsening weather conditions that necessitated the shutdown of electrical appliances. Heavy rain accompanied by thunder and lightning ensued, and one bolt of lightning struck Gil's house directly. The entire house was engulfed in sparks in a brilliant flash of light, while the sky above Gil's residence became turbulent with nature's fury. Unfortunately, the lightning bolt struck his helmet's power supply, causing a short circuit that released a visible surge of electricity, damaging everything in its vicinity. Unaware of the impending danger, Gil remained seated in his helmet, eagerly anticipating the game to load, accompanied by music playing in the background. Meanwhile, the electrical hazard crept closer to him. Gil excitedly daydreamed about his forthcoming date with Xiaomei, longing to see her. However, the electric current was on the verge of engulfing Gil's head, delivering a sharp, powerful, and penetrating shock that coursed through his entire body, rendering him helpless in its grip. Unable to call for help and feeling his body restrained, Gil struggled to comprehend the unfolding situation and how to put an end to it. Another potent discharge propelled Gil above his bed, intensifying its penetration into his body. From the windows of Gil's house, luminous beams of light spilled onto the street, as though someone were conducting perilous experiments within a laboratory-like environment. The inclement weather had caused a power outage, enveloping everything around Gil in complete darkness. Moonlight faintly illuminated the surroundings. After the electrocution, Gil's helmet was forcefully dislodged and landed on the floor, bearing significant damage due to its defective nature. A knock on Gil's room door startled his mother, who sought to ensure that all the equipment was switched off. Receiving no response, she decided to enter the room. To her surprise, Gil was nowhere to be found, but the light filtering through the window led her to discover the abandoned helmet resting on the bed. Meanwhile, in the virtual world, menacing creatures emerged from the forest, aiming to intimidate their helpless victim. They bellowed, opened their mouths wide, and brandished their swords. The girl, filled with terror, found herself surrounded by these monsters, her defenseless sword shattered. Though she valiantly attempted to engage in battle against the vile creatures, she ultimately became overwhelmed and trapped. In her desperation, she screamed for help, hoping that someone would hear her pleas and rescue her from the clutches of the monsters. Suddenly, a radiant burst of light diverted the attention of the monsters, interrupting their assault on the girl. Bewildered by the source of the light, they heard the sound of branches breaking in the forest, as if a colossal being was tearing through the trees, determined to reach them. The girl looked up and witnessed the demise of all the monsters at the hands of a magnificent hero who had come to her rescue. She recognized her savior. It was Gil. Gil, filled with fear and concern for Xiaomei, lamented his delayed arrival, which had allowed the monsters to encircle her. However, the girl was no longer in danger. Her eyes glistened with happiness, marveling at Gil's bravery. Her hand tenderly reached out to touch his, considering him a true hero. The girl leaned in, softly uttering Gil's name, to which he eagerly responded with hers. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, sealing their connection in a moment of profound intensity. Gil found himself bewildered and cautiously requested the girl to take her time before kissing him. However, to his surprise, her tongue inexplicably licked his lips, causing his face to become moist from the encounter. Opening his eyes, Gil discovered an unpleasant lizard in front of him, engaging in the unexpected kiss. Startled, he swiftly leapt up, forcibly removing the lizard from him. He called out the girl's name loudly, struggling to grasp the fact that it had all been a dream. After sitting up for a while and regaining his composure, Gil gradually realized that it was merely a figment of his imagination, and he had been kissing the lizard, which had since scurried away to feast on a bug. Gil was shocked by the astonishing realism of the dream, although it dissipated in an instant. He began to survey his surroundings, noticing a tingling sensation of electricity permeating his body, which oddly brought him a sense of pleasure. Rising to his feet, he walked around, observing his environment, sweat trickling down his face as the temperature continued to rise. Suddenly, a realization struck him about his whereabouts. He was actually inside the game itself. The burning sands stretched out before him, with a looming cave and an impending storm in the desert. Gil could feel the scorching desert sun beating down upon him, amazed at the remarkable level of realism. Contrary to his expectations of being transported to a newbie village for his first-time experience in the game, he found himself alone in the barren desert, devoid of any signs of life except for himself. Determined to contact his favorite player, Xiaomei, Gil accessed the game's hero search window and entered her name, initiating a search. However, to his surprise, the game yielded an unexpected result. There was no existing player with that name. Gil was puzzled by this incongruity as he was confident in having memorized her ID correctly. After a few more futile attempts, he made the decision to venture towards the newcomer's village, hoping that Xiaomei would be awaiting his arrival there. Gil had been trekking through the scorching desert for several hours, causing his clothes to become drenched with perspiration due to the searing heat. Despite wearing a cape on his head, it offered little respite from the relentless sun. Growing increasingly curious about the duration of his journey and his current location, Gil accessed the Cosmos map to glean more information. After scrutinizing the map intently, he discovered that the village he had been seeking was neither marked nor present at all. Frustration crept in as he contemplated the possibility of having made an error. The unbearable heat made it difficult for him to ascertain his whereabouts and determine his next course of action. Suddenly, a notification from the game informed Gil that the Game Master connection had initiated, requiring him to wait. However, the loading process dragged on, and he failed to establish a connection to the game's server. Concern began to gnaw at him. After some time, a message materialized on the screen, revealing that Gil was situated outside the service area. This revelation ignited his anger. To exacerbate matters, he discovered that he could not establish a connection with the help desk, further fueling his suspicion. In an attempt to regain composure, Gil delved into the realm of calculations, pondering the volume of sweat a person typically produces on a hot day. This exercise in mathematics managed to soothe his nerves momentarily. However, the weight of exhaustion and dehydration loomed heavily upon him, prompting him to contemplate quitting the game to discuss its difficulty with Xiaomei. Upon expressing his desire to exit the game through the program window, a new notification materialized, revealing the impossibility of quitting. Gil was overcome with shock, freezing in place as his eyes betrayed his disbelief. He repeatedly prodded the quit button, convinced that it must be a jest, only to realize that his attempts were futile. Instead of being logged out of the game, his screen became inundated with a cacophony of notifications, warning him of an unauthorized exit, the deafening sound adding to his distress. Gil refused to give up and fervently prodded every element on the screen in a desperate attempt to find a way out. The realization that he was trapped in the game began to sink in, and he reluctantly accepted this fact. As another unauthorized exit notification flashed before him, Gil's mind raced, trying to comprehend the meaning and potential solution to this predicament. A mixture of nerves and anger consumed him as he grappled with the notion of being locked within the game, uncertain of what to do next. Unexpectedly, a notification appeared, presenting him with a new task. Perplexed, Gil struggled to grasp its significance, as the screen provided him with all the necessary information, yet he remained unsure of what awaited him and how to accomplish the task. Desperation set in as he yearned to simply play alongside the girl he liked. He couldn't help but feel cursed, growing increasingly frustrated with each new challenge thrown his way. Channeling his frustration, Gil unleashed his anger on the sand, striking it with all his might, seeking a release for his mounting stress. Eventually, he managed to calm himself and settled down on the sand, exhausting every conceivable option to exit the game, all in vain. The realization that he might be trapped in the game indefinitely, without any chance of escape, weighed heavily upon him. With a sense of resignation, Gil rose to his feet, embarking on a directionless journey, his faith in his own strength waning. As time passed within the game, he found himself contemplating the striking similarities between the virtual world and reality, slowly becoming accustomed to the idea of never breaking free from its confines. The relentless heat began to take its toll, making Gil feel nauseous and lightheaded, aware that his life was in jeopardy if he didn't find a solution. However, he clung to a newfound desire to live, unlike anything he had experienced before. After some contemplation, Gil resolved to search for water at all costs. Suddenly, a small pebble caught his eye, triggering a memory of his grandfather watching a survival show and discussing this particular rock. Reminiscing, he recalled that such rocks were often found near water sources, sparking a glimmer of hope within him. Gil surmised that the presence of shale, the name of the rock, would indicate a water-rich area. Gathering his strength and taking a brief rest, he set off in pursuit of the life-giving resource. With his focus solely on finding water, he paid little attention to his surroundings or the potential dangers lurking in the desert. His sole purpose was to quench his thirst. However, unbeknownst to him, the desert's wild creatures had their own plans, seeing him as fresh prey. Eventually, Gil arrived at a familiar rock, taking a moment to catch his breath and prepare for the continuation of his journey. Hoping that his assumptions were correct and that his efforts would not be in vain, or else he would face certain demise, Gil perked up as he heard the sound of a droplet falling from a cave stone, a sound of hope. Standing at the entrance of the cave, he noticed a bowl with a single drop of water. Realizing he had made the right decision, Gil eagerly anticipated the taste of water. Dehydration had taken its toll, his mouth was parched, and sweat dripped down his face. With elation, he immersed his head in the bowl and greedily drank the water, savoring every drop. He drank the water as if it were his last, savoring its deliciousness. However, his thirst remained unquenched, and with every sip, his desire for more intensified. Gil couldn't seem to satisfy his longing for water. After drinking, he cupped the remaining water in his palms and gently washed his face, relishing the feeling of being alive. But his moment of joy was abruptly interrupted by the presence of a wild, hungry beast that stood at the mouth of the cave, poised to attack. Unaware of the imminent danger, Gil lay on the ground, content with having quenched his thirst. Having consumed a substantial amount of water, his movements became sluggish, making it difficult for him to react. His mind fixated on one thought: how to escape the game and break free from its grip. The idea of quitting the game became an obsession, compelling him to consult the map once again. Gil reasoned that if he was in a desert within the game, he might find a clue within the desert itself. Unfortunately, the map only displayed the explored areas, offering no immediate solution. Realizing that his journey wouldn't be easy, Gil resolved to thoroughly analyze the system's data to understand the necessary preparations and his own abilities. He discovered that his performance was lacking, relying solely on his agility. Uncertain of the specific conditions that governed his situation, Gil decided to explore the available equipment options to enhance his performance and ensure his protection. Opting for new gloves and a sword, he believed these weapons would prove invaluable in an unfamiliar environment. Surprised that the system allowed him to possess a sword, Gil contemplated the role of a sapper and whether wielding a weapon was appropriate. Rising to his feet, he proceeded to don the selected equipment, feeling a sense of security and strength. Once fully equipped, he acknowledged the need for sword practice and began swinging it in various directions, seeking familiarity and proficiency. Lacking any swordsmanship skills, Gil envisioned the imminent danger before him and wielded the sword in an attempt to address the problem. He imagined thrusting the sword into someone's chest, using these mental exercises to bolster his resolve. These exercises infused him with strength. After engaging in a skirmish with a shadow, Gil decided to assess the sword's efficacy by testing it on a tangible object. With all his might, he struck a stone lying nearby, causing the sword to cleave it in half. This display of power surprised him, as he witnessed the sword's strength and potency surpassing that of the real world. When the sword tests concluded, a window materialized, displaying the weapon's strength, a visual feature of the game that caught Gil off guard. Suddenly, growling noises emanated from the cave entrance, prompting Gil to prepare his sword and await the arrival of the unknown beast. However, the growling abruptly ceased, leaving Gil hidden but cautious. He had no inkling of what it could be and decided to scavenge for food. As he turned his back, a loud sound echoed from the depths of the cave, startling him and reigniting his sense of danger. Gil shifted his gaze toward the sound, struggling to discern its origin and the source of the noise. The unfamiliarity left him momentarily stunned, but he eventually regained his composure and resolved to venture deeper into the cave for exploration. To his surprise, the cave revealed itself to be surprisingly spacious, and his thirst had dissipated. Eager to survey his surroundings, Gil proceeded with caution, maintaining a vigilant stance as he carefully observed his environment. Suddenly, a bone tumbled out from a dark corner, landing directly in front of Gil, unsettling him. The thought that it might be a human bone horrified him, stirring a deep sense of distress. Gil's eyes filled with terror as droplets of sweat trickled down his face, and a shiver of creepiness ran down his back. Gathering himself, he resolved to venture a bit further to ascertain the identity of the remains hidden behind the large stones. To his astonishment, he discovered a mound of various bones and skulls belonging to unknown creatures. Questions flooded his mind about the origin of this bone pile, the cause of their demise, and how long they had been there. Picking up a bone that had fallen at his feet, a recollection struck him. He remembered seeing similar teeth marks in a photograph, leading him to realize the severity of the situation and the need to find a safe refuge. Swiftly turning around, Gil sprinted in the opposite direction, aware that remaining in such perilous surroundings was unsustainable. The predator lunged at him, but with quick reflexes, Gil managed to evade the ferocious beast. Crouching down, he narrowly dodged the beast's jaws, which snapped shut just above his head with a bone-chilling force. In the darkness, the creature's angry, glowing red eyes were visible. Gil stood poised, anticipating an attack, while the game provided him with a clue, revealing that he was facing a desert wolf TK and describing its characteristics. Armed with this information, Gil prepared himself for the fight. The first droplet of blood fell, splattering onto the ground, indicating that the beast had landed a minor blow during the assault. The wolf moved with incredible speed, reaching velocities of up to 65 kilometers per hour. Gil was well aware that the wolf's primary mode of attack was a powerful bite, which could exert up to 200 kilograms of force. He also knew that the creature's vulnerable spot was its belly, though reaching it would prove challenging. Gil sensed that the monster was still present, lurking and tracking his every move, anticipating an opportunity to strike. The wolf locked its gaze directly onto Gil, its mouth salivating, eager to tear him apart. Fleeing was not an option, as the wolf outpaced him in speed. Gil weighed his options, considering alternatives to engaging in a battle. However, he realized that there was only one path to escape the clutches of the wolf, defeating it. Slowly, he drew his sword, signifying his readiness to confront the beast. Gil was confident in his ability to overcome the wolf. He refused to succumb to his fear, embracing the determination to survive that shone in his eyes. Swinging his sword with conviction, Gil communicated to the wolf that underestimating him would be a grave mistake and that his will to live eclipsed any trepidation. As the battle progressed, Gil sensed that something was amiss. It seemed as though his strength was waning, even though he was not exerting full power in his attacks. A system window materialized before him, presenting a brief notification that revealed the cause of the issue. It became apparent that his health was depleting, necessitating immediate treatment. In that moment, Gil reminisced about his time in high school, particularly a class that brought him joy, Kendo. He had been a member of the Kendo club and took pride in being its leader. Gil had dedicated countless days to practicing with a wooden sword, diligently honing his skills. He aspired to become the best swordsman, recognizing the significance of precise movements and stances in the art of swordsmanship. Having already earned several awards from competitions, Gil possessed an impressive track record as the youngest master in the country, holding a 6th dan in Kendo. The fruits of his training were evident, and he took pride in knowing that he was on the right path. Many people failed to comprehend why Gil chose to pursue this particular martial art, but the reason was simple. One day, while watching a Kendo competition on television, he witnessed the skill and prowess of other masters. The impact of that tournament solidified his decision to pursue Kendo. Another significant influence was his mother, who had been a devoted fan of the sport during her youth. She would often watch Kendo matches on TV with Gil, her admiration particularly focused on the sports star at the time, Kimura. Seeing her joy and excitement left a lasting impression on Gil. As a child, he was sometimes reluctant to attend classes, preferring to spend time with friends on the streets. Initially, he believed that Kendo was easy, thinking it was merely about wearing nice clothing and engaging in combat with opponents. However, he soon discovered that Kendo was far more intricate and challenging than he had initially assumed. Yet, despite the difficulties, Gil persevered. Facing opponents intensified the complexity, as emotions ran high during those encounters. Gil found himself becoming increasingly excited, his heart pounding in his chest, and his breath hitching. He had to gather his composure and calm himself down. In his first competition, fear tightly enveloped him, rendering his body nearly unresponsive. It was a struggle to coax his limbs into movement. As Gil stood pondering the origin of the horror unfolding around him, an opponent swiftly launched an attack, cutting off his train of thought. Despite ultimately losing the battle, Gil gained invaluable experience from the encounter. He realized that his fear stemmed from his own weaknesses, prompting him to intensify his training efforts. Each training session presented its challenges, tempting him to quit. However, Gil reminded himself that personal growth required constant perseverance, pushing him to spend all his free time in the dojo. He repeated each movement tirelessly, even when others opted for leisurely walks or laziness. In moments of repeated defeat, Gil acknowledged his potential for improvement and dedicated himself to honing his sword techniques. The dojo became his second home, a place where the sword was an extension of his being. He continued to wield it, even when his strength dwindled to mere remnants. This relentless pursuit continued until Gil achieved success, attaining the rank of a master with a 6th dan. He knew that in a world governed by the law of the jungle, mastering weapons was essential, as the future held unpredictable and potentially terrifying opponents. Thus, Gil practiced tirelessly, driven by the memories stirred by the wolf's appearance. Determined, he readied himself for battle, swinging his sword once more, fully aware of the need to avoid underestimating his adversary. However, to his confusion, his attacks seemed ineffective. Suddenly, the wolf closed in, launching its own assault with a powerful strike of its tail, propelling Gil forcefully into a nearby wall and inflicting significant damage upon him. The impact was so forceful that stones from the wall were sent flying in various directions. As Gil struggled to rise, almost hysterically, caught off guard by the attack, he had neither the time to dodge nor the means to defend himself. Swinging his sword with all his might, he struck the wolf with incredible force, yet it did not inflict any damage. Confusion washed over Gil as he realized the futility of his repeated attacks. The game system reminded him that the wolf possessed powerful armor, rendering all his strikes ineffective. The only way to defeat the beast was by targeting its vulnerable belly. Before he could formulate a plan, the malevolent predator charged at him, moving with astonishing speed. Gil had to act swiftly. Barely evading another snap of its jaws, he acknowledged the wolf's weak point and pondered how to exploit it. However, a significant hurdle stood in his way: the wolf's exceptional agility and speed. It relentlessly attempted to tear him apart, knowing that a purely defensive strategy would lead to his demise. With his back against the wall, Gil found himself at a loss, uncertain of how to overcome the ferocious beast that refused to relent. The wolf grinned menacingly, and in that moment, Gil believed he was destined to meet his end within those walls. Notifications periodically reminded him of his dwindling health, leaving little hope for survival. Determined not to surrender or perish, Gil summoned his resolve and devised a plan to reach the wolf's vulnerable belly. He sprinted towards the wolf, launching his attack with the belief that it held the potential to deliver a fatal blow. Gil was confident that his strike would be decisive, propelling him to victory. As they closed in on each other, both combatants sought to prevail, their intentions shrouded in uncertainty. Drops of blood stained the frigid ground, their origins obscured, as both parties relentlessly attacked one another. Gil stood, sword in hand, while the wolf's massive jaws threatened to overpower him. Their eyes locked, freezing the moment in time as they contemplated their next moves. With an even fiercer grip, the wolf's teeth clenched, causing blood to spill onto the ground. Capitalizing on the wolf's slight lapse in vigilance, Gil drove his sword deep into the creature's vulnerable belly, the culmination of his weary efforts. Finally, he had succeeded. As the defeated wolf tumbled lifelessly to the ground, Gil basked in the glow of victory, his belief in his own strength bolstered. Deliberately, he allowed the wolf's teeth to sink into him, his only avenue to reach its belly. This calculated plan had executed flawlessly. Gil found himself developing a fondness for the game. Following the battle, a notification screen materialized, proclaiming the defeat of the desert wolf. Gil's tally included 6,000 points, propelling him to level 5. Additionally, he earned 25 skill points for vanquishing the wolf. With great satisfaction, Gil absorbed the information before proudly dismissing the notice. He reveled in the joy of being alive once more, as all the wounds on his body miraculously healed, leaving him as good as new. A peculiar notification appeared before him, announcing the launch of a hidden-level trading platform. Bewildered and cautious, Gil grappled with the implications, his surroundings transforming into a flurry of running programs and windows showcasing an array of armor and weapons. It dawned on him that this platform offered more than just weaponry and armor. In the distance, he spotted something familiar that seemed too incredible to believe: a stunning girl resembling his favorite character, Xiao Mei Mei, reclining on a couch. Anger surged within him, directed at the game developers who appeared to be trapping him within the game indefinitely. Yet, amidst his frustration, Gil reminded himself that he was merely within a game, a realm where points were rewarded for slaying creatures and leveling up granted points for distribution. He clicked on the game menu, discovering the marketplace section once again. Curiosity piqued, he decided to venture into it, eager to explore what could be purchased and at what cost. As he entered, a radiant glow enveloped his surroundings, forcing him to squint in order to discern the multitude of items present. Blades, swords, and various weapons adorned the platform, each accompanied by detailed characteristics, facilitating the selection process. The sheer abundance of items left Gil speechless, his jaw dropping in awe at the sight before him. Overwhelmed by the abundance of options, Gil found himself at a loss as to what to choose. The wide array of goods presented a challenge. Among them, he spotted a particularly intriguing sword known as Golden Glory, its impressive attributes instilling confidence in Gil. As he familiarized himself with the offerings, he gradually grasped the nature of the trading platform and continued exploring its contents. However, due to his limited experience in the game and his current player level, he was unable to unlock all the items, as accessing the inventory required a higher level. In addition to weapons and armor, the list also featured peculiar equipment reminiscent of household appliances, which puzzled Gil. It seemed nonsensical to acquire such items in a survival game, especially at exorbitant prices. Furthermore, Gil stumbled upon the mercenary system, but it demanded a player level of at least 100, far beyond his current level 5. Intrigued by the possibilities that selecting mercenaries might offer, he decided to delve into this section. Suddenly, a girl with a masked face materialized before him, her striking purple hair adding to her allure. However, there was an air of complexity surrounding her. Swiftly, she aimed the sharp tip of her sword at Gil, catching him off guard. Thankfully, he realized that she was merely a hologram and posed no immediate danger. Gil scrutinized her image, captivated by the girl's attractive yet dangerous demeanor. The subsequent character to appear was a mysterious warrior donning a large, round hat and wielding pointed swords, emanating an intimidating aura. Known as Tank, this character exuded a deadly presence, capable of dispatching victims with a mere glance. Another intriguing character possessed a mastery of magic, employing long hair and sharp claws that betrayed their inhuman nature. The enigmatic assassin wielded a sword with which they effortlessly cut down enemies, their face concealed beneath a mask while a hood adorned their head. Gil found himself pleasantly surprised by the diverse range of mercenaries available, each possessing their own unique qualities. The hologram of the warriors surrounded him, patiently waiting to be chosen. However, the lad knew that he couldn't afford to hire any of them, as his level was too low. Nonetheless, his gaze wandered past the warriors and landed on a beautiful elf girl, whom he assumed was a sapper. She stood out among the others, radiating beauty and appearing completely unarmed. Resting on a couch, she had butterflies adorning her ears and a small ponytail cascading down her back. The lad felt a twinge of confusion as he approached her, realizing that he was starting to develop a fondness for her, despite understanding that it was all part of the game. He couldn't comprehend why such a helpless class had been introduced. Following the presentation of the mercenaries, another notification appeared before him, urging him to unclutter his daily goods. Irony tinged his thoughts as he acknowledged that he was well aware of his level and what he could purchase without the prompts. Utilizing his level, he unlocked a few items, allowing him to acquire 5 sugar buns and 3 Coca-Colas. After enjoying a satisfying meal, he desired to inspect the stats window and requested the system to display his stats. Although his stats had returned to normal after the initial test, he still remained unaware of how to acquire new abilities. Consequently, he relied on enhancing his stats to progress. The lad understood that once he distributed his points, he wouldn't be able to retrieve them, knowing that his characteristics would profoundly influence the future fate of his hero. He meticulously explored all the available options to improve himself, studying the benefits of armor and the potential advantages of magic. Reflecting on his recent battle with the desert wolf, he endeavored to apply the valuable experience he gained from that encounter to effectively allocate his points. He placed his bet on speed and damage, having already devised a precise plan for allocating his points. Prior to confirming his choices, Gil upgraded his armor, strength, and agility. He understood that bolstering his armor would enhance his survivability, increasing his chances of withstanding attacks. Strengthening his physical power would aid him in defeating monsters during battles, while improved agility would make him more nimble on the battlefield. With a final moment of contemplation, Gil pressed the confirm button, knowing that his decisions would shape his abilities. As the system accepted the distributed points, a transformation began to take place within Gil. He sensed a profound shift, not only in his abilities but also in his physical form. His body filled with newfound strength, becoming more supple and flexible. This revitalizing sensation washed over him, allowing him to relax and revel in the empowering transformation. He felt ready to embrace the new adventures that awaited him. Just as the last of his transformations concluded, a pack of desert wolves stood at the entrance of a cave, eagerly awaiting his arrival. Gil was prepared to face them head-on, eager to put his enhanced abilities to the test. Drawing his sword, he poised himself for attack. As the wolves lunged towards him, Gil met them head-on, swiftly severing the top of the first wolf's head with minimal effort. He noticed a marked difference from his previous encounter. The increase in his level enabled him to inflict damage on the wolves, despite their formidable armor. It was evident that his swordsmanship had improved alongside his augmented stats, leaving him with no doubt that he could dispatch the wolves one by one with ease. With each wolf he vanquished, Gil relished in his newfound power, eager to obliterate more of these creatures. As his kill count rose, so did his level, and the wolves dwindled in number, succumbing swiftly to Gil's prowess. After eliminating the final wolf, a notification from the system appeared, signaling his achievement. Having triumphed in battles, Gil reached level 15, earning 240 experience points and 75 points to allocate to his characteristics. Satisfied with his progress, he concluded that a higher level made it much easier and faster to slay monsters. After completing his tasks within the cave, the young man hastened towards the exit. Outside, the night sky twinkled with stars, and the moon illuminated Gil's path. He replenished his water and food supplies, realizing that while the desert was cool, he needed to find a way out of the game. Not far from the cave, the road was strewn with the lifeless bodies of wolves. Not only were they slain, but there were also signs of the beasts being devoured. The scene held an eerie quality. Curiosity piqued, Gil leaned over one of the corpses, attempting to discern the cause of their demise and the entity responsible. Suddenly, near his location, a wolf was swiftly killed again, with astounding speed. Gil reflexively reached for his sword, anticipating an imminent attack. He strained to catch a glimpse of the unseen enemy, but his efforts proved futile. As the creature ceased its assault on the wolves, Gil finally beheld it in the moonlight. Standing atop a low mountain, the figure resembled a human, clutching the fresh carcasses of animals. Their gazes met, both individuals bewildered by the presence of the other. The mysterious being possessed knowledge about Gil, including his abilities, characteristics, and the weapons he wielded in battle. Gil lifted one of the slain wolves upon his sword, shocked at the manner in which they had been drained of life, as if their essence had been extracted. The realization dawned on Gil that he had been mistaken in assuming that the wolves were slain by a merciless monster rather than a human. The unsettling thought consumed him, leaving him uncertain about what lay ahead and whether he would survive a battle against this unknown adversary. The world around him grew increasingly peculiar, causing Gil's thoughts to become muddled and confused. Despite his near certainty of glimpsing a human silhouette in the presence of someone amidst the corpses, the figure had inexplicably vanished as if it had never been there at all. Gil's mind raced, considering the possibility that another individual, like himself, was trapped in the game. He resolved to track down this mysterious entity, once again lifting the slain wolf and observing the absence of blood within its lifeless body, as if it had evaporated under the sun. Unbeknownst to him, he was being silently pursued by the other creature, moving swiftly and soundlessly, elusive in the darkness. Gil pondered the notion of a player resorting to such barbaric methods, realizing that it did not align with what he believed a human was capable of. Once again, he acknowledged his erroneous assumptions and the fallacy of attributing such brutal killings to another human. Suddenly, a loud sound shattered the air, a system notification warning Gil of an approaching danger. As he turned to face the darkness behind him, he discerned a swift and aggressive attack. Reacting swiftly, Gil swung his sword with precision, resulting in a drop of someone's blood staining the tip of his blade. Gil believed he had the advantage of launching the first attack, aiming to inflict damage on his opponent. Just as he anticipated, something resembling a tentacle fell right in front of him, which he swiftly severed. Even in its detached state, the tentacle continued to writhe, indicating the creature's resilience. However, the force of this encounter had diminished Gil's sword strength to 25%. It became evident that this creature possessed formidable armor, dispelling any lingering doubts about its involvement in the wolves' demise. It seemed impervious to fear, driven solely by its desire to kill. Gil caught glimpses of the monster's legs from the darkness, as it intentionally withheld its full form. Yet, under the moonlight, Gil could discern most of its features, except for its face, which remained obscured. At last, the monster revealed its face, a terrifying sight with massive teeth and a wide mouth. 2 pairs of tentacles adorned its head, placing it in a superior class compared to Gil. Adopting a defensive stance, Gil readied his sword, while the monster raised its arm. In a swift strike, Gil managed to sever the creature's arm. However, he quickly realized that battling this monster would differ significantly from his encounters with the wolves. The monster proved stronger, posing a formidable challenge for Gil. Anxious thoughts raced through Gil's mind, acknowledging that his chances of victory were slim had he not increased his characteristics after the previous level. The monster landed a blow on Gil's ribs, a strike that would have proven fatal had he not recently leveled up. The monster stood motionless, observing Gil without uttering a word or making any sudden moves. It raised the severed arm, and before Gil's eyes, a new arm regenerated in its place, showcasing the creature's regenerative abilities. Defeating this creature became a daunting task for Gil, as he grappled with the realization of one of the monster's formidable abilities. The system provided a clue, revealing the monster's name as the Wandering Apexer, though its exact level remained unknown. With its arm fully restored, the monster stood poised to end Gil's life, its menacing gaze instilling fear within him. The monster thrived in the desert, possessing unparalleled speed that made it the apex predator of the region. To Gil, this creature posed the most imminent and genuine threat to his life. He realized that hiding was useless, for if the apexer decided to hunt, Gil would have nowhere to conceal himself. The monster remained motionless, merely observing the reactions to its presence. Gil had prepared himself to face various monsters, but the apexer surpassed them all, radiating a chilling power that could swiftly vanquish him. He desperately needed to devise a plan to avert the impending battle. However, the overwhelming power he witnessed immobilized him, leaving him rooted to the spot. The situation grew increasingly perilous, and it unleashed within Gil an intensity of terror he had never experienced before. The apexer loomed as the ultimate threat that Gil desperately wished to avoid engaging. But soon, he realized he was being hunted. Every fiber of his being tensed to the maximum, his body no longer under his control. The hunt commenced, with the monster sprinting towards Gil with incredible speed, while Gil remained bewildered, his sword tightly gripped in his hand. The expression on Gil's face betrayed his lack of knowledge on how to defeat the monster, yet the creature wasted no time and initiated its attack. Paralyzed by fear, Gil continued to stand motionless as the apexer's hand reached dangerously close, poised to grab him and drain his blood to the last drop. Unexpectedly, in a fleeting moment, Gil managed to dodge the attempted grasp, exhibiting a speed that seemed to rival the summoner. It was in that instant that Gil resolved to engage in the fight, despite the overwhelmingly slim odds of success. He mustered his courage and launched his attack. With determination, Gil leapt onto the monster's back, soaring through the air with his sword raised high above his head. Gradually, the fear began to dissipate as he resolved not to be intimidated and to fight until he met his demise at the hands of the apexer. However, when Gil's sword struck the vertex's shoulder, it failed to inflict any damage. The creature's armor proved incredibly resilient, rendering Gil's weapon ineffective. Undeterred, Gil launched another attack, successfully severing a couple of antennae from the monster's head. As Gil prepared to strike once more, he was taken aback to find the vertex vanish from beneath his sword. Turning his head, he was greatly surprised to see the monster already looming above him, leaving him defenseless. The summoner had caught Gil off guard, striking his face with lightning speed. The impact was so swift that Gil couldn't even perceive the moment of contact. The force of the blow sent him hurtling far into the desert, a blow that could have instantly claimed his life. Colliding with the ground, Gil sustained further injuries, rendered powerless in this dire situation. All he could do was wait and hope that he would survive. Unable to slow down his descent, Gil devised a plan and plunged his sword into the ground, using it as an anchor to reduce the speed of his fall. Despite his efforts, he still tumbled across the ground upon landing but managed to regain his footing, clutching his sword to minimize the damage from the vertex's strike. He came to a complete stop and took a moment to catch his breath, astounded by the incredible speed and power of the monster's blow. Wiping the blood from his face, Gil acknowledged the significance of the speed the system had warned him about, yet he refused to surrender. Just as Gil had regained his footing, the vertex stood before him, poised to strike once again, intent on delivering a swift and fatal blow. Unexpectedly, the word, Huko, escaped the monster's mouth, its meaning known only to the vertex itself. After uttering the word, the monster vanished once more, utilizing its extraordinary speed. Gil remained rooted in place, perplexed by the monster's message, unable to comprehend its intentions. It didn't take long for a new attack to ensue, with the vertex striking Gil in the chest. The blows grew increasingly forceful and relentless, causing Gil to spit blood onto the monster's hand. Never before had he endured such ferocious and precise strikes. Overwhelmed, Gil fell to his knees, his sword slipping from his grasp and clattering to the ground. In that moment, the monster raised its hand, preparing to deliver yet another blow. Gil's ribs felt broken, and he bled internally, spitting blood onto the ground once more. He wondered if the last strike he received might have been lethal, ending his torment. The monster loomed over him once more, poised to strike again. Gil struggled to comprehend its motives, questioning what it desired from him. The apexer stood in silence, relishing in the destruction it was inflicting upon him. Calmly, it struck Gil once more, for the third time, with tremendous force, causing him to be propelled several meters away. Gil trembled from the onslaught he endured and the damage inflicted upon him. Clutching his sword, he crouched beside the trembling Gil, bewildered and uncertain of how to retaliate. Unexpectedly, the monster uttered the word, Haku, once again, leaving Gil shocked. He couldn't believe that the monster would return his weapon to him. Why would it do such a thing? The apexer raised its hand, as if attempting to convey something to the still confused Gil. Though he didn't fully grasp its intentions, the gesture seemed familiar. The summoner extended its sword towards Gil, no longer launching attacks. Gil couldn't comprehend the situation or why the monster was returning his weapon. It reminded him of a cat toying with a mouse, not immediately devouring its prey. He mistrusted the gesture, perceiving it as a game orchestrated by the monster to prolong the suffering, rather than swiftly ending his life. Taking hold of the sword, the monster suddenly seized Gil by the throat, lifting him above its head in a surprise attack for which he was unprepared. However, Gil refused to become an easy target and resolved to fight back against his assailant. Striking the monster with his sword, he felt a surge of power course through his entire body, as if he had been granted a second wind. A thick cloud of smoke billowed over the desert, visible even from its farthest reaches, signifying the intensity of the battle taking place. The apexer deflected Gil's attacks and launched counterattacks. Gil lay on the ground, uncertain of where to find the monster's weak point. Following this assault, the sword's strength dwindled to 80%. The monster's speed far surpassed Gil's own, making it impossible for him to keep up. Normal attacks proved ineffective against the creature, which seemed impervious to harm. Hovering above Gil, the monster seized him by his shirt, once again lifting him high above its head, continuing to toy with him like a mouse. Gil observed the vertex intently, unable to anticipate its next move, but he braced himself to defend against an imminent attack. In a surprising turn of events, the monster spoke in a human language, uttering a single word that Gil understood clearly, human. The revelation that such a creature could speak left Gil shocked, though he had hoped it could comprehend human speech. The apexer proceeded to speak further, underestimating humans and mocking their weakness. Gil, unwilling to tolerate the insult, swiftly severed the monster's hand, determined to prove it wrong. After freeing himself from the monster's grip, Gil quickly distanced himself to a safer position. The monster remained unperturbed by the loss of its hand, displaying a calm demeanor. It was the apex predator, unconcerned by such setbacks. In time, the severed arm regrew, returning to its previous state. The apexer harbored a curiosity, having not encountered humans in a century. Similarly, Gil found the monster intriguing, but he had no intention of submitting to its authority, even under the threat of death. Looking up at the monster, Gil smiled, feeling a surge of exhilaration he hadn't experienced in a long time. He realized that his family, friends, and his past life were distant memories, and in this moment, he needed to let go of his attachments. He had no right to perish in this game, and he resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead with unwavering determination. Filled with determination, Gil's body once again radiated with a bright light, imbuing him with increased strength. He wished for everyone to maintain hope and wait for his return, determined to survive the game. A powerful column of light illuminated the desert, piercing through the clouds and reaching the sky. The cause of this phenomenon remained unclear. Shielding his eyes from the intense flash, the Supreme saw Gil within the radiant light, emanating an unfamiliar power. Gil appeared unstoppable, invigorated by the surge of newfound energy coursing through his body. The transformation was a pleasant sensation. The game system notified that Gil had activated the will to fight, a special blessing bestowed by the goddess Latona, amplifying all of his attributes by 100 points. Now, he was significantly stronger than before. Raising his sword above his head, Gil brimmed with explosive power, eager to dispatch the summoner swiftly. The Apexer viewed Gil's transformation as a welcome challenge, recognizing his rival's newfound strength. However, before the monster could react, Gil was already closing in on it, his enhanced speed matching that of the Vertex. Gil unleashed rapid and forceful strikes upon the summoner, driven by the hope of a successful attack. Blood sprayed in various directions as his blows found their mark, causing the monster to bleed. Despite his initial success, Gil remained vigilant, aware of the monster's regenerative abilities. With his sword, Gil continued to assault the Vertex relentlessly, delivering precise and targeted blows. During one of his attacks, Gil's sword shattered into countless fragments, prompting a swift notification from the system indicating its zero durability and rendering it useless. Discarding the hilt, Gil chose to retreat from the monster, not wanting to fall into its clutches without a weapon. He strategically withdrew, gathering his strength, preparing to strike with a clenched fist. Once again in close proximity to the Vertex, Gil delivered a powerful blow directly to the monster's face. The force behind the punch was immense, causing the Apexer to be flung away as though it had never existed. Now, the monster was compelled to defend itself against Gil's relentless assaults. Driven by his determination to alter the monster's perception of the human race, Gil hurried to the spot where the Apexer had been thrown. However, to his surprise, the monster had vanished. The Apexer's astonishing speed became evident. It had purposely allowed itself to be damaged to test Gil's strength and had already circled behind him. Gil's attacks proved incapable of killing the monster. Realizing he was trapped, Gil struggled to comprehend how the Vertex had regained its senses so swiftly. Despite repeated attempts to rise and resume the fight, the Vertex closed in on him, reiterating its earlier statement that humans were mere parasites. The sorrow on its face made it clear that Gil could not overcome it, even with enhanced characteristics. Suddenly, the monster ascended high into the sky, with Gil at its feet. Its ability to fly posed an even greater challenge. The Apexer sought to conclude the battle, having grown tired of its victim. Raising its hand, a sphere of energy materialized in its palm. The monster employed a technique, summoning an even more terrifying creature, intended to bring an end to Gil. The sheer power displayed was unlike anything Gil had witnessed before, instilling the supreme certainty that Gil would meet his demise. With his hand outstretched, bidding farewell to Gil, the monster directed its full power toward him, certain of landing a fatal blow. Gil, lifting his head, observed the impending attack and realized he had to take action or perish. A tremendous rumble reverberated across the desert as the assault reached the ground and struck Gil. It remained uncertain whether he had enough time to evade. The attack bombarded Gil's body with a sensation akin to 1,000 needles, representing one of the Supreme's most devastating strikes. Survival seemed bleak as Gil collapsed onto the ground, drained of all strength, his life force gradually fading. Nonetheless, amidst his bleeding and dwindling consciousness, he clung to the desire to convey something. Unprepared to meet his end in this game at the hands of the mastermind, Gil held on. After some time, a system notification appeared, announcing the depletion of Gil's health points, 0, and confirming his demise. In a bewildered state, Gil heard the voice of a girl expressing relief at his recovery. As he regained awareness, he found himself before a beautiful girl holding a basin for laundry, utterly perplexed by the situation unfolding before him. The girl swiftly turned and rushed towards the door, calling out to her grandfather that the guy had awakened. Suddenly, it all came rushing back to Gil. He had been dead, but now he was miraculously fine. A multitude of questions flooded his mind, seeking answers about what had transpired. Gil remained seated on the bed, attempting to make sense of it all. His heart raced with an incredible intensity, a mix of excitement and confusion. Taking a deep breath, he tried to calm himself, realizing that he might have dreamt the entire ordeal. Uncertain whether he was truly alive or trapped within an illusion, Gil glanced out the window, relishing the sensation of freedom. However, It was premature to rejoice, as he still needed to uncover the identity of the girl, understand how he had arrived there, and determine how he had evaded death. Through the window, Gil beheld the beauty of nature, with the sun casting its radiant light upon the mountains. Yet, he couldn't comprehend the nature of this place. Realizing he was not yet free, Gil accessed the game settings, hoping to review his attributes and make sense of the situation. With a dissatisfied expression, he discovered that he remained trapped within the game, with no apparent means of escape. The realization weighed heavily on him. He recollected how the summoner had seemingly defeated him that night, leaving him convinced of his own demise. Now, he grappled with the mystery of how he had awakened in an unfamiliar location unscathed, devoid of any battle scars. Deep in contemplation, Gil was interrupted by the creaking of the room's door, drawing his attention to the figure that appeared in the doorway. It was a stunning young girl with vibrant red hair, entering the room and bringing a change of clothes for Gil. The girl repeated the same phrase she had told him during their initial encounter, but Gil couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He remained on the bed, in the same position as before, and everything seemed strangely familiar, as if he had experienced it all already. Perplexed, Gil greeted the stunning stranger and informed her that he had just woken up, despite feeling like it had all happened before. However, the girl didn't respond and instead turned to leave, calling out to her grandfather and informing him of Gil's awakening. Gil couldn't comprehend the repetition and the confusion grew. He briefly entertained the thought that he might be in a village of fools. In the meantime, a man with long gray hair worked leisurely in the rice field, paying no heed to the commotion. It was evident from the scars covering his body that he had endured many battles. Unaware of his granddaughter's shouts, he asked her to repeat her words. Amidst the ongoing dialogue between the young people, the grandfather eventually joined them. Gil recounted his story, mentioning his slashed chest and inquiring about his whereabouts. The girl pointed to her grandfather, explaining how Gil had ended up in that place. Grandpa, as he was called, had discovered Gil near death while out hunting. Smoking his pipe, Ube reminisced about that fateful day. Gil was astonished to learn that they had no knowledge of any game or pledge village. They were ordinary people, tending to their daily tasks and living simple lives. Gil found it impossible to believe and dismissed it as a system error. He pondered how he could convince them of the truth, that everything around him was a game. An idea struck him, and he called up his character window, hoping it would provide evidence to support his claims. However, as Gil waved his arms around, explaining how the taskbar and map worked, both the granddaughter and grandfather looked on, unable to comprehend. They grew tense, thinking Gil might have injured his head, as they couldn't see anything he was referring to. Gil realized that the room lacked a signal and that his ID, bearing his beloved's name, wasn't searching. He felt cut off from the outside world, fueling his frustration. Despite his best efforts, he remained trapped in the game, devoid of any ideas on how to escape. Gil, overcome with frustration, began to aggressively tap on the taskbar. He desperately wanted to escape from the game and return home. He wondered if anyone had successfully managed to leave the game and what they had done to achieve it. Hoping that their experiences could offer guidance, he turned to his grandfather and questioned how he knew it was impossible to leave the game and how they had ended up there. In response, the girl, after some contemplation, decided to share their story. She revealed that they had slain a dragon on the mainland and were subsequently struck by lightning, transporting them to this unfamiliar world. Her grandfather knew that they were in the vast desert, where anything and anyone could exist. She informed Gil that the only way to escape was by reaching the Temple of Kiri. However, she also warned him about the countless people who had embarked on that quest and never returned, causing many to abandon the idea and choose to live within the game instead. Gil listened attentively, but he was determined to return to his own world, where he was happy. Ube, placing his hand on Gil's shoulder, advised him to gradually accept this reality, assuring him that later his granddaughter would show him the town. With that, Ube and Sally left Gil alone with his thoughts. Despite experiencing similar storylines in the real world, Gil was certain that he was still trapped within the game. His musings were interrupted by an unexpected system notification, which he initially didn't comprehend. It turned out to be a new task awaiting him, seeking revenge for the early demise of Kiri. Though uncertain about its meaning, Gil had no other options but to accept the task. As he read the assignment's terms, he discovered he had to locate and break the seal that imprisoned the god of Cabri. This seal had spared Gil from death earlier. The conditions for completing the task seemed unrealistic, requiring him to find the temple, defeat the monster Nas, and free Kiri. However, the reward for accomplishing this mission provided some solace, a key that would aid his escape from the desert. Leaving the room behind, Gil encountered Sally, sitting on the grass. He relayed the details of his new task, expressing uncertainty about how much time he would need to complete it. After conversing with the girl, Gil turned away to contemplate his new assignment, aware of the immense difficulty it posed. Despite the challenges ahead, he reflected on the fact that he had already died once, realizing that whatever lay in front of him no longer mattered.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.